And now, just for you, YK World!
All right, you are listening to YK World, a podcast about the goop between music, art, and technology, told through the lens of YK Records and the Nashville music scene. I'm your host, Michael Eads. Our show music that you heard right there at the beginning is by Mac Burris. Always a big shout out to Mac. Hit him up at Mac Burris on Instagram to get your own fantastic music. Now, before we get into the real substance of this episode, which I'm sure you know what it is based on seeing the title, I do want to call out a few super quick bites of news. A miniature Quibi, if you will. First off, in October, a month that I got a new job and thus did not have time to record a podcast, YK Records released multiple new albums. Steer yourself over to ykrecords.com and check out the 2025 EP from Trashman called Cool Until It's Not. It is a blast of infectiously catchy rock songs contemplating existential dread. We got some really nice press from Bandcamp and a bunch of others, and an incredible write-up from Start Track, among others. Here's the pull quote from Start Track.
Cool Until It's Not is a short and sweet love letter to power pop that is born from the world we live in, but refuses to be swallowed whole by its looming clouds of despair.
Amazing. Also, make sure you listen to the new album from Jessica Breanne, entitled Electric Heart. This full-length record is Jessica's sophomore album, but far from her second release overall. She's got a fantastic history of songwriting and music making that really evolved into this record. It's a wonderful blend of rock, psychedelic influences, soul, a bit of R&B, and maybe even some roots influences in there. We've got some great press from Third Eye Psych and Zillions. The Third Eye piece is a lengthy rundown of the record, which you should definitely read. But here's a quote from Zillions that really hit me.
Jessica Breanne serves up a delicious reminder that music at its best is not only about sound, but also about memory, emotion, and the bravery to remember where we have been.
Both of those records are out now. Go check them out. They're on your streaming platforms. They're on your Bandcamps. YKRecords.com. It has everything you need. Just click releases in the navigation there. Or if you're on mobile, hit the hamburger first. That's what we call the 3 lines. A hamburger. Hit the hamburger, then hit releases, and then you're good to go. Coming up this Friday, November 7th, is a brand new full-length album from Zook. You may not have heard me talk about Zook on this show before, but if you follow YK on Instagram or you've listened to any of the shows I've curated for We Own This Town over the years, you know I am a huge fan of Zook. I can't wait for people to hear this record. The album, called Evaporating, is out everywhere on November 7th. He's playing a record release show at Soft Junk that same night. The album will be on digital, it's on vinyl, it's going to be on cassette. With the cassettes are from Second Floor Recording Company, aka Billy Campbell, a name you will certainly hear more of. The vinyl is a beautiful canary yellow, and we only made 100 copies of them. After we give out some copies to friends and family and band members, there's even less than 100. So if you want one of these, order it now. They're going to go quick because the album is gorgeous. One song is available now on streaming, Absolute Misery. Definitely go check it out. There's more on the way on Friday, November 7th. The whole album's worth. It's gorgeous. Okay, that's my quick bites. More on all of those things later. This episode, I finally get to sit down with 2 musicians that honestly, I don't feel smart enough to be in conversation with. YK Records has the fortunate pleasure of releasing music with the electronic artists Coupler, aka Ryan Norris, and Sugar Skulls, aka Ben Marcantel. These two have known each other for 20 plus years and collaborated on and off for about as long, and all of the work that they have made has been impressive and engaging and thoughtful in some way or another. Most recently, they released a collaborative EP together on YK Records called The Great Oxidation Event. It's a piece of electronic music presented in 3 parts. Both the concept behind the release and the techniques used to create it are fascinating. Conceptually, the Great Oxidation Event is about a geological event caused by the development of early unicellular life, releasing a mass amount of oxygen into the atmosphere and oceans, killing nearly everything, but eventually resulting in life as we know it. Now, how does a song evoke that idea? Well, just give it a listen and you'll get it. But it really does evoke those feelings. It's very cinematic and it pairs incredibly well with the music video that Ben made to go along with it. It's fantastic. That sounds heady, but I promise it's very approachable and makes a lot of sense. More practically speaking, the piece was recorded and created in a manner inspired by the Miles Davis album Bitches Brew. On that record, Davis recorded a long improvisational piece and producer Tio Macero edited it into the album's final form. No overdubs or additions, only edits. That same approach was taken here. Ben Marcantel recorded a long improvisational piece and handed it off to Ryan Norris with the instructions not to add additional overdubs, only modify and mutate what was already there. Now, no one's comparing the Great Oxidation event to Miles Davis' Bitches Brew. It's just a similar technique used to create them both. Copy, transform, combine, as they say. This interview with Ryan Norris and Ben Marcantel covers a lot of ground. It is a lengthy episode. It's probably 2 episodes worth of chatter if we're being honest, but I wanted to pack it all into one since it flows so incredibly well together. These two are unbelievably thoughtful. They both talk about music so intelligently, fluidly, and casually. They aren't showing off, they're just comfortable. We talk about the new EP, the process that went into making it, editing it, and the accompanying music video. But we also talk about intersubjective realities, haiku-based compositions, how perfection is boring, how work is discovered, not created, and how anyone that tells you music just came to them is lying to you. It's all work and process, but in a good way. None of this conversation is overly heady or dense. It's really just fascinating. I do throw in a small intermission around an hour just so that you can let yourself soak up some of these ideas, but truly, just enjoy it. These two are good friends from way back and have a whip-smart way of talking about music that is unbelievably captivating. I'm honored to have been in the room, even if it was over Zoom. Okay, enough of the preamble. Here we go. We can just dive right in. And my starting point for diving right in is actually my origin story of meeting the both of you. I just was thinking about it today and was like, oh, I think I met Ryan at Grimey's when it was on 8th Avenue because there were cards in the racks of vinyl that were from Brian Eno's Oblique Strategies deck. And I had no idea what they were. And I think I was just checking out and talking to you about, like, what's that thing over there? And you explained to me not only what Oblique Strategies was, but probably who Brian Eno was.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I think that is a good foundation for Ryan Norris, like as a starting point.
Can we back up a little further? Because
yeah,
I think my memory of our origin story is Hands Off Cuba released. It had an awesome title. I think it was called From Arrival to Survival.
Yep.
And we put it out, and I was playing in the privates at the time, and Keith Lowen, I feel like it was at one of our rehearsals, maybe not, but he showed me, you did a blog post on We Own This Town or something, and he showed it to me. And basically what you said is it's a disgrace for for you guys to release this music and have no web presence. And if you get in touch with me, I'll make you a website for free. And I was like, oh, that's funny. That's interesting. The internet, you know. And then not too long after that, I was at a show at Mercy Lounge, and I don't know what's back there now, but at the time there was like if you went past the bathrooms into that back zone, there's like a big room with a bunch of tables, but nothing really going on back there. And I was talking to some people, and I see this person that I don't know approaching me, and you come up to me and you said, "How do you feel about the internet?"
Wow. How bold
That
of me.
must be Michael.
Yeah.
The
Man,
conflicting stories. I feel like that's also a good origin story.
that is a great origin story. I'm sure that I did that. I'm sure I was probably inebriated when I approached you because I'm not good at approaching people cold.
You had a little swagger,
Yeah.
like a little.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the internet?
A head bobble, if you will. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that feels good for me to hear because I think that means that I have always been advocating for bands I enjoy to be in a place where they can be discovered.
Yeah.
I'm patting myself on the back for that because I stand behind it. Feels pretty good.
And I think you should. And I feel pretty stupid to still be just like not more all in on that kind of stuff. Like, you know, all the people that I care about that are in media are like Kara Swisher, for example, is just like, hey, you got all these tools, just use them, you know. And I mean, granted, she's like someone who worked for the Washington Post and all this other shit. Like, she's a high profile person, but it's like, even still, for people that aren't super high profile, there's just all this shit there for you to use, you know. There's just, you know.
Yeah, I hear you on that. It's very hard for me to take advice from people in that.
That are that famous.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Like, it's like being like, hey, Home Depot's got lumber and hammer and nails. Go build a house.
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, the tools are
Usually
there.
talking to other very famous media personalities, but I guess my point is, like, I'm pretty lazy about using the tools that are available. I think for me, I like, for the longest time, and even still, I'm just like, I do music, I'm good at that, and the rest should just kind of take care of itself. And that's a very old school mentality, you know? It's just like, that's not the world we live in anymore.
It's not, but it actually speaks to a thing that I struggle with a lot as someone that runs a label, and all these tools exist for you to put your music out yourself and to promote it yourself and to like do all the things. I'm like, well, what point is there up to a label? In 2025, right. What's the point of a label? Like, you don't need me to put your music on Spotify. I will do it for you, but you don't need me to do that. You don't need me to upload it to Bandcamp or to make a website. Like, you don't even need me for that anymore. Like, all the tools do exist, but I think the answer is, what good is a label? Is like, it's somebody else in your corner that is like helping you. Because there are a lot of tools and there's maybe too many.
Yeah.
There's maybe too many tools. And they aren't tools that are attuned to being a creative person. If you're like making music, it doesn't mean that you know how to make a reel on Instagram.
Right. I mean, the advocacy part is important, but also, I mean, the thing I like more and more, the thing I just come back to is, I mean, whatever, I teach music now. And so, like, I make most of my money from music through teaching and through other shit. And so that's kind of the dream, but also the reason to do any of this, especially like as the rewards are so much more slim now, the reason to do it is, you know, community, camaraderie, creativity, the 3 C's I came up with.
And our episode has a title.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think the like Spotify be an island unto yourself and everything you do model idea, I just think it's bullshit. Like, that's not what doing any of this is about.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I also think that all of those streaming platforms are not the way to go. Like,
no.
It's great to hear that I was advocating for a website back, 20 years ago, because I do think having your own owned and operated destination is the way to go. And maybe that, you know, you can even see it with like a Bandcamp, which no one saw coming that they were going to sell themselves to Epic and then get sold again to Songtrader. But like, even those platforms are like, oh, they're not rock solid. Like, all of these media platforms have profit in mind at the end of the day. They don't have your
shareholder value.
Yeah, they don't have the 3 C's in mind. Not at all. So it's just interesting. Yeah, I agree. The 3 C's are, I think, just rumbling around in my head. Ben, I want to go over our origin story, which it's so funny to hear that, Ryan, you remember me approaching you at Mercy Lounge, because the first time I saw Ben, I believe was at Mercy Lounge, maybe in the same era. Maybe you all can correct me on this, but I went to an 8 off 8th. And for people that don't live in Nashville, 8 off 8th, it was a thing that happened. It was a show that happened on Monday nights, and 8 bands would play, but they would only play 20-minute sets. So it was a really nice way to get in front of an audience of kind of a diverse audience, because there were 8 bands playing and they would all bring friends, and you only had to play for 20 minutes. So you didn't have to like flesh out a full set or something. You could just try something, or if you were new and you didn't have like anybody who knew who you were, it was a great place to get introduced. And those things still exist around Nashville and around every big city, I'm sure. But 8 off 8th, there was some magic there, or I was the right age, or both. I don't know. But I saw Ben play at an 8 off 8th, and he played a Game Boy on stage.
Oh, yeah.
To my memory, Ben, you played a Game Boy. And not only did I genuinely enjoy the music, I think it was the first time I had ever seen someone play chiptune live, and definitely the first time that I had felt like, oh, there's somebody else in my region that gives a shit about chiptune. Like, that is a genre that they are interested in. I had heard Makeup and Vanity Set do a chiptune remix album of the Proto Men's first record, but I hadn't heard anybody like do original compositions of chiptune that was local. I don't even know if I talked to you that night, but that evening was definitely in my brain. I'm like, oh, let's remember this guy. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do remember that set. Yeah. Yeah. I think Steve Cross put that.
It's very possible. Steve Cross put that together. Was that your first outing playing Game Boys, or just my first time seeing it?
It probably, I guess, your first time seeing it, because we were doing like shows at Betty's all the time. Ryan and I guess that's when Leslie Kepper was booking a bunch of stuff, and Steve. And
interesting. So we would play. Ryan, were you playing that set? In my memory, it's only been on stage
at 8 off 8th.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you remember who else was playing that show?
I know Scale Model played it.
No, I mean like as Sugar Skulls.
It was just me.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just me, yeah.
I never performed as part of Sugar Skulls. There was a moment where Hands Off Cuba and Forest Bride were kind of the same band, playing different material. Like, we would even like rehearse, like, didn't we rehearse on the same nights? Because we could get everybody together and like.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. We definitely did shows that way, where it would be like, we would do a set, like Hands Off Cuba would do a set, and then and Forest Bride would do a set. I don't remember the order, but because it was just like, I don't know, 15 weirdos. I mean, I don't even remember how many people it was. I mean, I guess it was like kind of like early Lamb Chop if there wasn't a singer, and it was like all like kind of weird instrumental music.
What a fertile period of Nashville. Like,
yeah,
in hindsight, very, very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, my origin story with Ben goes back to Murfreesboro.
Yes, that was exactly my next question. Perfect transition.
Hey, you set them up, I knock them down. Well, okay. So the reason I even moved to Tennessee was, do you know Joe Colbert? I can't remember.
I do.
Yes. Okay. So I knew him, the first band I was ever in high school in Alabama. Joe was the bass player, because he's his dad lives in like Northeast Alabama. I can't remember where Joe is originally from, but he lived in Tuscaloosa for a few years. We started playing music together. He left. Long story short, I briefly moved to St. Louis, of all places, with a band that I was in, and then came back, and suddenly, even though it was just St. Louis, suddenly I was like, oh, the world is a larger place than I realized.
Yeah.
And I was like, if I'm going to play music, like, I need to get out of Tuscaloosa.
Right.
Not that people don't play music there, but it's, predominantly covers and blues and, what you'd expect. And I was like casting around, trying to think about where I could go. And I was like, I have this memory of Joe moving to Tennessee or Nashville or something. I got in touch with him. I visited him twice. Actually, so the Features actually came to Tuscaloosa and played this place called the Chucker, where my band used to always play. Chukker. Doesn't exist anymore. It was next door to this place, Michael's, that was like at the time the only gay bar in Tuscaloosa. So they came down and played. I was blown away. I totally fanboyed Rollum. I was like, "You're like the best drummer I've ever seen." And he's like, "Yes." You know.
I was gonna ask if that was pre Rollum or not, but it's in it.
No, he was there, and it was right before I moved, and that was one of those moments that kind of solidified it for me. I was like, "Yeah, I gotta go. I gotta get out of here." But the 2 times that I visited, that's how I met Rollum, William, Tyler, Luke, Schneider. I can't remember who else. I met a bunch of people, but
wow,
I met them like right away. And then I moved. I didn't realize that Murfreesboro I thought I was moving to Nashville. I thought I was moving to like a suburb.
Right.
And I didn't realize that I was moving to a town that was 30 minutes away.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I left this like college town where I grew up to go to another college town.
Yeah.
That's smaller.
Yeah.
And whatever. And everybody I met was really into pop music, which was not a thing that I really had gotten into yet.
What do you can you define that more discreetly?
Well, okay, first of all, the Beatles, who I love, but also the Beach Boys, who I also love, but also a lot of new wave stuff that I wasn't into yet. XTC, Elvis Costello. A lot of people at that time were into, Wilco Summer Teeth was kind of recently out. Sloan, Navy Blues.
Right. So, okay. Pop, not pop as we refer to it today in 2025.
Not pop as not Taylor Swift,
right.
But like pop rock that was not really like stuff that I was necessarily familiar with or enthusiastic about. And I just remember driving around with Joe one day and I was like, and we can cut this in case our parents listen to it. But basically what I said was, don't you know anybody that just like smokes a lot of pot and listens to Radiohead? And Joe was like, yeah, actually I know just the guys. So we showed up to this house where Ben and all these other guys lived. Casey, what was Casey's last name?
Casey Burgess.
Casey Burgess. And it wasn't the house where we used to always jam. It was a different house. You guys hadn't moved into that place yet, I don't think. But, we went over there and smoked a lot of pot and jammed. And then that became kind of a thing where I don't think it was a certain night of the week or I don't remember how we ever coordinated it, but I would go over there. There'd be like a huge circle of people in a living room that largely didn't have furniture. Maybe there was a sectional in there. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And we would get like just blazed and improvise. And, I was a little bit of an improviser from like growing up being into blues and blues rock. Like I knew how to like make stuff up on the fly, but this was like big group improvisation, which is not a thing I'd ever done before.
On what instruments?
I was playing guitar. I don't remember.
Yeah.
So it's not. I guess I'm asking if it's more of like a pop rock kind of setup, or if there's some synthesizers in the mix. Because I think of both of you predominantly as electronic musicians.
Yeah.
Even though Ben, I don't actually know if you play guitar or not. I have no clue.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think there were any synthesizers at that. It was basically just guitars and bass and drums.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, bass was the first thing that I learned. And
I remember you as a bass player.
Yeah, we just hours of jamming.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So Ben, what's your recollection of that exact same story?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty accurate. The thing that I remember about Murfreesboro and also going to study like recording industry and music and all that was like,
he's making air quotes, folks.
Was it like just meeting other musicians and like really kind of getting a taste of like, you know, young male kind of competitiveness. Just remembering being like, wow, people like a lot of really awful music, but they're also like way better than me. I remember Ryan was the first guy that I met that could play really well, but he actually had good taste in music because everybody was like trying to do like Widespread Panic or like Fish. And I kind of realized I didn't really like that stuff, but it was like, okay, you can play and you know a bunch of cool music. And yeah, there's always kind of like who could find what new music first. That was also kind of a thing. I don't know if you guys remember that. It was just like, I don't know.
Who could find new music first? Is that what you said?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
There was a certain competitive edge to that too. Like I remember, I mean, I had this experience when I first moved to Nashville and met all these people where I felt like, oh, I don't know shit. Like I don't know anything.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Because everybody that I met was such a freak about like just the knowledge base, just knowing as much as possible about everything, like who played on what record, who recorded it, who the players like were, personnel, like what year, all like I don't have siblings, and so I didn't have like the cool older sibling to turn me on to stuff. The person that was that for me was my buddy Joel, who was in the first real band I was in. He's the guy that got me into like Kind of Blue and Sketches of Spain. He's the guy that got me into Flaming Lips. He's the guy that when OK Computer came out, he was like, you got to see the video for Paranoid Android. It's insane. And, there were all these like benchmarks I had from him, but then moving to Nashville, like the level of knowledge that I feel like just walking around ass people had was like beyond anything that I was aware of. So I was like, okay, well, I got to do a lot of homework. But also, Ben and I were in this recording industry class. I mean, this is when I knew when I first found out about that, I remember saying to Joe, like, oh, you can like go in the studio and record and get like school credit for that. That's insane. That's amazing. And he was kind of like, sounds cooler than it is. I don't remember what exactly he said, but the way he reacted, it was like, yeah, okay. But then we had the like intro to the recording industry or whatever, one of those big like stadium seating kind of classes. And I can't remember the professor's name. And like, I guess he liked me, even though I just fucking busted his balls all the time in front of like hundreds of kids. Because I remember at the end of it, because this was the class you had to take to advance into like either the production or program or the business program or whatever. Everybody had to take this one class. And I was like, I hate this. This fucking sucks. And I remember at the end of the semester, him being like, all right, see you around. And I just, no, you won't.
Well, did you continue with the recording industry program? No.
Oh, I didn't.
No,
I have this real hang up that has become kind of an origin story for me where like my grandmother was a painter, and when I was a kid, I wanted to be a visual artist. Right. And then I started taking art classes in middle school and high school, one of which my high school teacher, Miss Sharonis, was married to, I think his name's Tom Sharonis, who was one of the Seinfeld people. Like he was either a director or writer or showrunner. He was one of the big people on Seinfeld. If you watch episodes, you'll see his name in the credits all the time. I think she was very bitter about that because I think they divorced before he became the Seinfeld guy. But those classes just made me absolutely miserable and made me feel a way about art that I didn't like. And I've always been worried that studying music formally would have a similar effect. It's funny that I teach music now because I have this attitude towards music pedagogy, but like I have this memory of calling, I'm not a great sight reader. Guitar players usually aren't because there's tab and there's whatever. And like There's not a lot of guitar in the classical music repertoire. There's some Bach wrote some stuff, and some people did, but it's not like an instrument that learning how to sight read, like a lot of stuff in music is like about immersion, right? It's like language, and so I wasn't in the context where I could easily learn to do that. I was in jazz band 1 year and choir 1 year. And I remember I found out there's a jazz studies program in Alabama, and I called the enrollment officer and whatever, and I was talking and I want to do this. And it's like, I'm not a great sight reader. Like I can read chord charts and whatever. And the guy was so fucking smug and was like, I suggest you take some like remedial music courses and get back to us. And so I just always have these things in my brain. And so I'm in this music industry class and I'm like, you know what? I hate this. And I do not want this to make me hate music.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's the worst possible world for me.
Totally. But it's also pretty incredible that, I mean, you had to be what, 20 and could recognize that. I would not have had that insight into my own thinking for sure.
Yeah.
I'm a stubborn motherfucker.
Ben, did you have the same?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I had a specific moment. There was a quote in one of the texts. It was like 5% of musicians make 95% of all of the profit in the music industry. And I was just like, oh, so I'm never going to make any money doing this ever. Like that was my first kind of like, it actually has nothing to do with music at all. And just a kind of similar takeaway that Ryan was just like, okay, so this is not the thing that I thought it was.
So Ben, what brought you to MTSU in the first place? Like, were you excited about the recording industry program? Had you already, you're playing bass, but did you have aspirations of playing music for a living or being a studio person? Like, what was your sort of just general framework of being in Murfreesboro?
Yeah, just super naive. Like I got full scholarships. So I was like, okay, I don't have to pay anything. Like,
yeah,
this will be great. I'll just go do music and it'll be awesome because I love music and I think I'm good at it. So of course it'll work out. And it's just like, oh, everything I know is completely wrong and backwards. And it's just kind of like, okay, what do now? It's sort of like,
I don't know that you're wrong and backwards, but naive is the right word. Just because the industry is not set up to spread the wealth. It is very concentrated on like that tiny percentage. So,
well, also too, it's it's not like music is like medicine or math or something. It's like everybody can do music. Everybody loves music. What sells the most has nothing to do with anything that anybody can measure. Like it's just different. So it's just, you kind of have to say, either I'm fine with that or I'm not. Just,
Yeah. I do want to argue with you that anyone can do music because as a person that has been in 2 miserable bands, not everyone can do music. But I take your point, and it's a good.
I don't know. I don't think you could enjoy it if you weren't musical. Everybody's musical.
Our dear mutual friend, Uncle Matt, I remember he said to me once, Matt Glassmeyer, for those following along at home,
Meadow Noise.
He said Meadow Noise. We should teach music the way we teach people to dance, I think. Or it was something like that, where like his point was everyone intuitively knows how to dance, whether they're any good at it or not. You put a beat on, hey, let's say it's a 4 on the floor kick at 120 BPM. Everybody knows how to respond to that, right? From a little kid to somebody who's on death's door, like it's twice the resting human heart rate, yada, yada, yada. It elicits a response from you. And I think the point he was trying to make is that's the way to think about teaching people music. I mean, that guy, I wish I could remember his name. He's an English educator. He did a famous TED talk. He talks about this, about how, everybody's creative until, gets beaten out of you at whatever age, because it's like the people that are good at it, it's like the whole, like, ask kids in kindergarten how many of them can draw, and they all raise their hands, and then ask them a couple of years later in like 3rd grade, and it's like one kid raises their hand.
Yeah, totally.
And that's the kid who's been selected as like they're good at it, and so that's a path they can pursue.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you're both at MTSU. You've met each other. You're friends. You're connecting on a musical level that's camaraderie, like simpatico. There may be a little bit of competition in like finding new music and like being an archivist to understand what Brian Wilson's third movement was on this abandoned tape kind of thing. I think that happens in a lot of circles. Do you both drop out of MTSU? Do you graduate from MTSU? How do you get to Nashville? And speak also to like, were there musical collaborations happening at that time between the two of you outside of just jamming in the Pothead no furniture room? I don't mean that negatively.
I briefly dropped out of MTSU for like maybe a year. I dropped out. I moved to Nashville. I moved in with Luke and William and Keith Lowen into what came to be known as the Idaho House, because it was a whole scene there. And then Doyle hired me at the Great Escape, but like I wasn't working at the Great Escape proper. I was working at Duffel Bag. It was like their online store. I was basically doing data entry. So Doyle hired me. And I think the way I got hired is he was wearing a Can t-shirt and I said, Malcolm or Damo. And he just goes, So he hired me there. He later had to fire me because, they were like losing money or something. And they had to cut the weakest link. And it was me because I was new, but also because one of the bosses like caught me reading liner notes. Like, God forbid I should like know anything about what we're selling, which is a thing that when Doyle rehired me later at Grimey's, we would always talk about. It's like, it's okay for you to read the liner notes. It's like, it's okay for you to know about what we're selling.
Wow.
I was also like, that was a pretty like dark year for me because I wasn't playing music. I wasn't in school. I was working at a job that I hated and I was really super depressed. And then I started playing in character, and that was with William, later with Luke, Dave Paulson, Eric Williams, Scott Martin. That's how I met a bunch of those guys, Phil Pomeroy. And then at some point in there, I started going back to school. I found out from someone, John Rogers once called this a basketball player's degree, which is funny because I don't think he ever finished school. Whatever, John. It basically found out that like I could take as many classes as I wanted, and once I had enough hours I could just graduate. So I just took as many classes in English and philosophy as I could until I had enough hours to get a degree.
So it didn't have to be towards this particular major, it was just totally hour based?
No, it had the dumbest name.
University studies.
So
I did the same thing.
Yes. You did the same thing. It's called University Studies, but it's also like Bachelor of Science in Liberal Arts or something.
Yes.
Something weird. I remember having this conversation. Like I was briefly an intern at the Rage when Pat Embry was still running it. And I remember we went and got lunch somewhere and I was talking to him about all this. And he's like, well, there's two ways to look at getting an education in school. It's like, you think of it as a trade school where you learn to do a thing, or you can treat it as, going to learn how to think and learn about, the breadth of human knowledge or whatever. And that's the way I treated it because I didn't want a recording industry degree or whatever. That just seemed like a waste of time for me personally.
Sure.
No shots.
Sure. Ben, what about yourself? Backing up to that question of, did you graduate? Were you in projects? Were you collaborating?
Yeah.
The two of us, were we collaborating?
Well, I'm curious about both. Like you're talking about being a character, you had a dark year, etc. I think that lays a lot of nice groundwork towards where we're going. But we're obviously working our way towards Great Oxidation event and talking about it, but it's not your first collaboration. So I want to get there. But okay. Ben, tell me about your MTSU. Like, how did that resolve?
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar. We were definitely doing some collaborations, just like making music, trying to figure out like what do I want to do with music realistically? What does it even mean? How do I still feel this compulsion to treat it like a really serious hobby? I think we did like we spent a couple hours like one afternoon recording like a phone message or something. I don't know if you remember that. Like we got like
message.
we got like all these different samples from like these different records, and like
I do remember this.
it just kind of went on and on. Just like there's like lots of one-offs and trading like 4-track tapes and stuff. Just kind of like
I love that.
messing around.
I feel like there was a prankstery kind of data music concrete quality that a lot of shit we did back then had, where we were just like, yeah, like we were recording someone. You're talking about we were recording an away message, right?
Yeah.
Just a bunch of weird bullshit from records, right?
It just kept going on and on and on.
Yeah, forever. I remember that.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing, which is totally like a time period thing, was like, this is when you could get like a CDR of like Fruity Loops, that you would get like a cracked version from somebody.
Oh yeah.
So we were definitely playing around with like, Fruity Loops and like early sort of like, I guess, DAW recording and experiments like that. I remember trading a bunch of like CDR things back and forth, rewritable CDRs at that.
Oh, that's right. I got to shout out. I don't remember how you got into that stuff, Ben, but for me, when I started playing in character, Dave and Scott were both making like hip hop beats with Fruity Loops, and they were like trading stuff back and forth. And when I heard the shit they were making, I was like, oh, what? Like you can do this with a like a computer? And I got a cracked version from one of them, and that's basically how I started making electronic music. I mean, a little bit before that, I was living with Luke and William, and I think I destroyed both of their 4-tracks because I basically blew up the mic pre's because I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, I had one of those Lowry home organs that has a drum machine built into it. I was really into the first Suicide record at the time. So I would take a line out of the headphone jack of that thing and run it just way too hot into these 4-tracks where it was just like everything was in the red. And I would just make these like crazy tracks that way. And then after that, pretty soon after that, I got a cracked copy of Fruity Loops and started messing around that way. I mean, I've kind of just been in love with electronic music ever since. I mean, my first instrument is guitar. Like I grew up playing guitar. I started when I was 13. I grew up in a college football state.
Sure.
Like a smart guy in Alabama. It's like, you're a nerd. Fuck you. You can't catch a football.
Yep.
And then I started playing guitar, and then I got some social capital out of that. I'm like, okay, well, this is a thing. Like I'm good at this. I can do this. And then I moved to Nashville, and everybody in Nashville's a guitar player. Character had 2 guitar players. And then it was like, why don't you play Williams Ace Tone and see how that goes? It's like, I'd never played keyboard in my life. So
wow. Okay.
Huh.
But it was around that time that I got into electronic music and production and that kind of side of things.
Had you been listening to it? Like, or was that also sort of a bridge to like opening up that as an interest for you just to listen to leisurely?
I think, okay, so 2 things. First of all, my first memory, I think, like conscious memory of electronic music is On the Run from Dark Side of the Moon.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically just like a synthesizer sequence and a lot of sound design, crashing sounds, and people running, sounds like people running from the secret police or whatever. And I was I loved them. So I knew there was like Rick Wright, keyboard player. Like I knew there was like synthesizers and a lot of production stuff happening on their recordings. Really loved Live at Pompeii. I mean, honestly, a lot of it for me goes back to Radiohead and like OK Computer, and then Kid A. Kid A came out like basically right around the time I moved to Nashville or Murfreesboro. I remember being very confused by that record at first, but also like there was something there that I really loved. And I think that was one of the things that like sent me down a rabbit hole with electronic music, and, you know, getting into craft work and Eno and all that kind of stuff, which we should at some point circle back to the oblique strategies.
Sure, for sure. Ben, are you also into electronic music? Like, do you have a specific like aha kind of moment, or had you been dabbling?
Yeah, it's funny because like for the longest time I thought that like I hated music because like so much of like the pop stuff from the 80s, like Peter Cetera, like it just made me so depressed, and like so much electronic musical equipment was based around trying to make synthesizer sound like other things, like horns or strings. So I always kind of thought it was bad music. And yeah, I think Portishead was probably the first thing that I remember hearing as a teenager. I was like, okay, I think I kind of understand like how synthesizers can be cool, because it was like in the 90s things were still so kind of like genre fragmented. It's like if you liked rock, you couldn't like hip hop. If you liked metal, you couldn't like punk, you know, all that kind of thing. So I just always kind of thought electronic music was stupid because people didn't play it. But yeah, like Portishead and then Kid A. It's funny, it's like something like Kid A when it came out seemed so revolutionary, but now like looking back, now that I've listened to like, you know, Aphex Twin and other things that were around that they were trying to copy, it's like, okay, this totally makes sense why they did what they did.
Yeah.
It is groundbreaking, but having listened to all that other music, it's just sort of like, okay.
It's funny
makes
though.
sense.
It's funny though, they will, I mean, I feel like Tom York specifically, even in interviews around the time, he would cop to like, what we're doing is not actually revolutionary. And they were always good. I mean, honestly, I got into a lot of cool music around that time. From like moving to Nashville and meeting a lot of people that were into a lot of stuff. But I mean, even at that time, I remember Tom York being like, this is nothing new. Like, go listen to, you know, whatever. Listen to a Kraftwerk record, listen to Aphex Twin, listen to Noi, listen to whatever. Like, we're just hodgepodging together music that we like. That's, you know, 30 or whatever years old at that point, you know?
Totally. But I mean, that messaging is what he should have done.
Yeah.
And also that's what music is a hodgepodge of your influences and your likes. Just
copy, transform, combined. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's funny because I think they said Vitch's Brew was a big influence for OK Computer, and that's kind of how I found out about Miles Davis.
I think that's
because
how
of
I
that.
found out Vitch's Brew. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like you go back and you listen, and it's like, oh, this thing that seems like it's totally brand new has actually got this really long traceable lineage, and it's like getting into like can and craft work, and it's like, okay, and kind of understanding the scenes that music existed in and seeing the parallels. So like the scenes that we're in, it's like, okay, these are just people that really love sound and music, and they're not really concerned about creating anything commercial. It's like this whole idea of like avant-garde, or what does that even mean? It's like, okay, it's one of the C's or something. It's just community.
Yeah. Well, this is a good transition into Great Oxidation event, because like I said, Ben sent me this long form track that he recorded, and the prompt was to not play anything. I've done stuff like this before. One of the first, I mean, this is a different kind of example, but one of the first things Scott and I did with Lamb Chop was this remix EP called Collab. And I remember Scott's thing at the time was like, no overdubs, which, you know, there's all kinds of ways to do remixes. And I do plenty of overdubs when I do remixes, but that was his prompt. And so I came up with all kinds of creative ways to get around that, where I was like not playing anything, but chop some stuff up, make a loop out of it, send that out to like the PS3 pitch shifter pedal or whatever, and send it back in. And then next thing you know, you got all these fluttery, like crackly sort of sounds. So I was already used to working around that kind of idea, but basically use editing, use interpret this in whatever creative way through sound design or anything else, but don't add overdubs, so to say. Which maybe it's a distinction without a difference, but it's still those kind of things as far as the way they unlock creativity, I think is important, because otherwise I might have just gone to, well, maybe I'll just play this thing or whatever.
Yeah. So this is a great transition. Nice job, Ben, bringing up the bitches brew, bringing us right in, just smooth as butter. For those that are tuned in and listening to this and aren't familiar with the Great Oxidation event, it is a new EP with 3 movements, collaborative projects between Sugar Skulls and Ryan Norris. You heard all about this in the intro of the episode, but the idea behind the collaboration, and both of you, by all means, step on and correct this, but the idea is Ben will record a long form, I believe largely improvised piece, and hand that off to Ryan with that prompt to say, do whatever you want with this, but you should transform and mutate it. I loved when we talked about this off air, using the word mutate. I don't know, just really stuck with me. The prompt is transform and mutate, but refrain from using overdubs. So I love this concept. Obviously, it's not a completely unique idea. It is a thing that has been done by lots of others, but it is unique to the two of you doing it. And I think the results are amazing. I want to start at the very kernel of it. Did the long form improvised music that sort of starts it, was it improvised, number one? And number two, did you have the Oxidation event in mind? Was that an inspiration for the long form piece as you started?
No, the title and the concept came afterwards. During the COVID times, I got insomnia pretty bad, and so like one of the things that would help me sleep was science documentaries or whatever. So there's a couple on YouTube that I would put on, and one of them was actually a song. I just kind of filed it away. I was like, oh, that's really interesting and strange. So that's where the concept came from, because that's what the music sounded like to me. I was like, this actually fits with this.
So which came first during COVID times? Which came first? Was it the science documentary, or was it the long form piece? Like, I'm just not sort of clear on the order of operations there.
Oh yeah. I heard the documentary years ago, and I wrote the piece last summer.
Okay.
So I've been playing around a lot with just sequencers, just trying to get away from composing music visually, which is what I've been doing for like the last 10 years, writing everything and like the DAW, writing all the notes out and then sending it out as like, I would just want to like write things just by hearing them. So I've been doing a lot of like sequence based music. And so I had this little setup with like, I guess it was 4 synthesizers. Each one is a mono synth. So I can only do 4 notes at a time. I wrote the piece in about 2 weeks, and then I was like, I should just record this and just see how it turns out, because it's one of those things that's like, I have fun making it, but I don't know if it's actually enjoyable to listen to, if that makes sense. Because it was such a different process where instead of creating like a very focused composition, it's just kind of like vibing. And Ryan and I actually have talked a lot about this, kind of like, how do you write music in the age of samples, where it's like, some of my favorite music, some of the most compelling music is built around a sample. And so it's just kind of this idea of like playing with, I guess, vibes instead of writing things out. So that's kind of how this piece emerged. And so I had this thing. I went over to Billy
Campbell. Let's shout out Billy Campbell, Second Floor Recording. Yeah. Make Yourself at Home is his band. Second Floor Recording is his label. Billy's great.
He's awesome. So I think he was done in tape. So I just brought over my synth, set it up. We did it to tape. So we can only do 15 minutes. So we split the piece in half. I ran through it. We just, skid levels. There's some sort of technical thing or something. So we redid it. So what I gave to Ryan, like we did the whole thing, I think in about an hour or two. We just hung out for a couple hours. So I gave it to him. It was just 4 tracks, the 4 synths. And yeah, that was it. And then, once I heard the music, I was like, this sounds like the Great Oxidation event. I was like, it's so stupid and nerdy. I have to call it this, because again, back to Miles Davis, But like Bitches Brew, I remember when I finally got it, because there was a lot of music that I would have to like listen to over and over, just back to talking about being young and trying to understand, things and new music. It's just like it finally clicked for me one night because I kept listening to it like it was like pop music, like trying to find the best melodies or whatever. But it's like it's not really what that music is for. It's just you're just supposed to experience it, and it finally clicked. And when it did, I had all these kind of like images in my head of like prehistoric life, and it's like, okay, this music sounds like it's alive and like it's moving. It's like I need to also file this away because it's a cool way of making music. And so to me, the two things just seem like they fit together.
Absolutely, they definitely do, for sure.
And that's the origin story.
So I guess it's probably semi-improvised in
Yes.
way that a lot of electronic music is. It's like there are beats and melodic and bass things and so on, and you're kind of playing the controls.
Exactly. So there's like the sequencer that I had 4 lanes, one for each synth. And so I just had these little like they're basically like little patterns. So I would pick a pattern on, and then once I'm inside a pattern, I can mutate the pattern, change it, play with it, layer things. But then because they're modular synths, I can control the filters and the delays, and everything's plugged into everything else. So like the LFO from one synth is controlling like the delay on another synth. So it's this idea of like, if you're not having to just play the notes like you do on a guitar, if you're not worried about the pitches, what else can you control and play with? That's kind of, for me, the idea of what's neat about electronic music is you eliminate this concern, which is the actual playing of the thing. It took me a long time to kind of understand that, because to me, it's like music is made by people. It's stupid to have a computer do it, but I don't know. That for me, that was kind of like a big understanding. It's like, okay, if I'm not worried about the music, what else can I put it?
Well, right, and that becomes like what you end up with is part of the content is stuff that can't really be notated.
Exactly.
All shit can't be notated on a staff. I mean, you can like write down that that's what's happening, but it's not really like it's a different set of parameters.
Ben, do you feel like you had that as an epiphany at some point, or do you feel like that's just been like a long journey of your music making to sort of get to that way of thinking about electronic music?
It's definitely a journey. Because like I said, growing up, I thought electronic music was just imitative. I didn't understand that it was something that could be totally different. And then also not understanding the context of what dance music is and what it's for. It's like, again, dance music isn't pop music. You're not supposed to sit down and listen to it. You're supposed to dance to it and have a big hall with other people.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. It's just sort of like, I don't know, just sort of the closed-minded thinking that I guess whenever I first got into like music and stuff, it's like, what's the best thing? What's the best? Why is this thing the best? And it's like, it's all the best. It's just the context is
right.
Is everything.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very 19-year-old, early 20-something-year-old way of thinking. Like, what's the best? Until you realize like, oh, all of it's good. But it's so interesting to hear you speak about. I'm being quiet over here because I think I'm rolling this idea around in my brain that the electronic instruments are playing and you're doing something else. You're not playing them. You're manipulating them. You're playing them in their own unique way. I cannot articulate this right now. I'm really fascinated by that idea that it's playing and you've taken that element out, but you're now interjecting your human choices through these other means, but it's a very different outcome. It's a fascinating idea.
Yeah, it's like there's what, like 6 components to music or something. It's like pitch, rhythm, timbre,
attack, decay, sustain, release.
Right, yeah. So it's like, just remove one of the things and you can play with all the other things. It's because music, so much of it is gonna like Brian and I will probably both do this, slip into like pontificate mode or whatever, but it's like music up until like recorded music with so much about the notes, like you only had so many instruments, you know, people weren't really thinking about timbres. It's like the orchestra has all the instruments that it's got, and those instruments make that sound. So it's all about the notes that you're playing, and the notes are the meaning, you know. It's like this idea of like, you know, the tritone is bad, or, you know, this is the perfect way of music. Exactly, yeah. And then, you know, when you get to recorded music, suddenly you have all these timbres that people have never heard. And those timbres, by them being recorded music, suddenly have all this meaning. So it's like when you hear an electric guitar, like it automatically means something in your brain beyond just the note. So it's just this idea of like new sounds. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
If I think about it in terms of sounds being like emotional kind of language, rather than the notes, which is always the thing that I was kind of focused on when I first learned music, was getting all the notes right and understanding good notes, bad notes, all just kind of that. But then realizing like, oh wait, actually the notes don't really matter at all. It's, I don't know, it's an ongoing thing. Just sort of what is the thing that you're actually latching onto when you hear music? You know, it's not as simple as the chords or the melodies, really.
No, totally. If we're just going full on pontification mode, I would say that there's an emotional aspect to it that is completely unique and siloed to the listener.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's all that it is. It's just that experience, that feeling or not having a feeling.
Right. Like looking at a piece of art where you're like, it doesn't even matter what they were thinking when they painted this. What do you think when you look at it?
So there's this idea of intersubjective realities, and like the idea that any work of art creates an intersubjective reality. So there's like, if you think about it like a Venn diagram, there's like whatever the artist intended, right? And then when the viewer or viewers come into that, they're bringing their own set of experiences with that, defining, like understanding this piece of art or whatever in relation to every other piece of art they've experienced. And so whatever little bit of overlap or maybe more overlap that you get between what the artist intended and what the experiencer experiences, like that's your little bit of intersubjective reality, you know?
Yeah.
And I think about this a lot. I mean, part of it's like, you know, teaching students and so on. It's like, there's so many different, and I'm like fully galaxy brain rambling now, but like going back to the primacy of the score, right? Like classical music, it's all written down. Classical musicians read. The whole thing is like being able to reliably reproduce a note and a specific timbre, and to be able to do that over and over again. And whatever. Like you might play it a little faster, you might play it a little slower. See Glenn Gould's argument with Leonard Bernstein about whatever Bach piece that they got pissed off at each other about. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it wasn't Bach. Anyway.
Yeah, I just listened to that. It's totally Bach.
Oh, I know. Bernstein totally goes out and just drags Glenn Gould.
He's like, no, I don't necessarily agree. Yeah.
Completely disagree with this interpretation of this piece. But, mostly it's like, that's the thing you're doing. Music is on the page, you're reproducing it, right? With jazz, it's like there's lead sheets and there's chord changes and there's standards, but basically you're supposed to know every standard and every key, and you don't read on stage, not like a classical musician. Rock musicians don't read on stage. You just, you know the tunes and you show up and you play them. Electronic music, same thing. I mean, the question is like, what's the content, right? Like, is it the notes or the beat or whatever, or is it the way that you are manipulating those sounds? I mean, it's both, but I think like what Ben is articulating, and I'm taking a much longer time to try to articulate, is that there's a whole, like, electronic music allows for a whole range of manipulation that is, it's beyond what existed before, because you can't write it down. I mean, that's a lot of it. And one of the things that we've talked about a lot, Miles Davis got roasted for, Tio Macero editing that music. Starting, I mean, maybe before In a Silent Way, but definitely In a Silent Way, Bitches Brew. and beyond, there are obvious editing in those recordings, loops. I mean, in a silent way on both sides, like the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes of both sides are identical. It's not just that they're doing the same thing at the beginning and the end. It's that it is a tape edit, and this thing that happens at the beginning happens again at the end, and it is the same. And Stanley Crouch and all these other like jazz critics were like, nope, that's not jazz. We hate that. And a lot of people think of this as like proto hip hop, which also Eno and Byrne, My Life in the Bush of Ghosts, also considered proto hip hop, is like the medium allows for manipulation beyond. It's like, are you going beyond the documentary aspect or not? Right. Because you can, and some people, this is all they want to do in a studio, and that's fine. That's Steve Albini. That was his approach. I'm a documentarian. You're going to come in here. You're going to play your songs, and I'm going to record them, and I'm going to make them sound as good as I can make them sound. And that's an approach, and that's great. But that's not the only approach. There's the whole studio as instrument idea. And I think Ben and I have both been fascinated by that for a long time. For me, it comes from, okay, I've developed proficiency on an instrument, and then I moved to a place where there's lots of people that are proficient on this instrument. Now what? And that has colored the way I think about music ever since. And that's why the like Eno calling himself a non-musician thing was always appealing to me. First of all, he's from an art school background, but also he later clarified this. It's like, yeah, I can play music, but like I said that in the context of English prog, all these like shredders. And it's like, compared to them, I was a non-musician.
Right. Well, you're getting to something that's a really nice bridge here, where you're talking about studio as instrument. You're talking about Tio Macero's Bitches Brew edits, all of those things. You are that instrument with Ben's recordings. Speak to what you receive the Great Oxidation Event recordings, and you're prompted, hey, I want you to manipulate this and mutate this. What is your decision-making process with that? Like, you're getting music that's presumably already enjoyable. How do you inject yourself and creative ideas and feel like you're extending this idea? Like, did you have the Great Oxidation Event as a concept when it was delivered to you, or
I don't think so.
I think someone's about to knock on my studio door, so I'm gonna pause for 1 minute while I talk to a weird stranger on the deck.
Good night. So you were asking me, like, when I got the music, what was my process? Where did I start? Sort of.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny. Somebody said to me the other day, like, I feel like mixers, like, it's very subjective for them, and I think that's true. It's like, if you're a recording engineer, you're documenting more. And if you're mixing, you're interpreting in a way. I mean, maybe there's just an unobtrusive, like, middle of the road way to make something sound a certain way. Like, usually when I mix and master stuff, it's for electronic musicians, usually from Nashville. Funny that. But I feel like I usually start from trying to be kind of creative about it, and then it kind of like ask for forgiveness instead of permission, wait for someone to say, like, you've gone too far, man. But this was immediately more open-ended, because the idea is like, put your creative fingerprints on this, not by being strictly musical, but being more sound designy, I don't think we talked about Can, but like, one thing I always think about is, at the same time that Miles Davis and Tio Macero are doing what they're doing in the States, Can is doing something similar in Germany, where, and I just like this idea in general, improvisation followed by editing, it's like the was it Hemingway or whatever, right? Drunk, edit sober or whatever, like what we talk about a lot in that Eno class is like, let the child mind run free before you let the adult mind take over. So, I mean, I feel like first there's just like a little bit of experimentation where it's like, okay, I've got different versions of each of these 4 sounds. What do I need? I mean, I'm like anybody, I've got a few things that I like to stick in a signal chain to just sort of see what happens, like the noise gate thing that I talked about in one of the videos.
Yeah.
That's like, I'll try that all the time. So I like, so I've got this synth arpeggio pad thing. I'll just put a noise gate on it. I'll send the kick drum to the noise gate so that it only opens when the kick drum hits. And let's see what that creates. And it creates a pulsy, choppy thing. Okay, let's add some delay to that and see what that does, And now let's put that through a pitch shifter thing. So you've got a higher register version too, I don't know if it was the first thing, but one of the things I did early on is send that the bass synth already had a plucky quality to it. It was like, okay, that sounds kind of like pizzicato or whatever. I'll send that to the, the Logic strings, pizzicato string sound, see what that does. Okay, cool. Now it's got a kind of like suspense horror movie, kind of like you're being chased quality. Okay, that's cool. And I talked about this in one of those other videos. It's like, I like to find these like zones where functionality starts to break down a little bit, and at least in Logic, the audio to MIDI function, it doesn't like polyphonic information. So even though this arpeggio it's an arpeggio, so it's not chords, but they're layered, there's delay. So it creates a polyphonic texture. You put that into this audio to MIDI thing, it gets kind of confused. It reads it in these weird ways, and you end up with these weird like splashes of color and so on. So that's kind of the thing where it's like, that's the generative part. And then the sculptural part is like, okay, where are those best moments? Where are the moments where there's just this like explosion that sounds like, this beautiful bloom of like weird dissonant strings happening. Okay, so I'll cut out everything else and then that will just explode and then it'll go away again. It's a lot of that kind of stuff. Like, first of all, because like Ben said, it's like you've got 4 sound sources, right? 4 synths. So sending each one of those to different kind of signal chains, seeing what happens, seeing what that generates, and then kind of like chopping away to leave just the best bits, like the most interesting parts.
So did you have the Great Oxidation Event concept? Like, was that like from the get-go?
I don't think so. Ben, didn't you come up with that later?
No, I think I was literally the last thing. I was like, what am I going to call this? Oh, I know what I'll call this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
but like I said, it fits so perfectly with
the
narrative of the music.
So 2 things. One, Ryan just mentioned a bunch of videos. For those of you that are listening, he did a series of 3 videos that are on Instagram and YouTube of some of the like specific like software manipulations that he's referring to. So you can watch him sort of walk through that. They're very short and very insightful. Very much recommend them. They're linked in the show notes. The other thing is that I explained this at the top of the show, but the Great Oxidation Event is like a geological event that happened to planet Earth in pre-ancient times, where the planet's not even oxygen-based, and it becomes oxygen-based. And for that to happen, a bunch of unicellular life forms start giving off oxygen, which basically like kills everything on Earth, almost everything. The movements of the piece, the Great Oxidation Event, are very, to me, the way this was explained to me, and obviously I'm last in line for this process, like you guys have done all the work, was like, oh, this is the concept, this like great massive extinction event on the planet. There's kind of 3 movements of like the oxidation event kind of starting to happen, it happens, and then life sort of starts to bloom again. Are those the 3? Am I remembering that correctly, Ben? Is that like the right?
Yeah, that's certainly it.
So I cannot believe that is applied at the end of this, because that fits so nicely to the two movements.
Yeah, I just have a little notebook full of things like that, and it's just that's what it sounded like to me. It's like it's kind of like the context of the thing is what it makes it. Like I don't think the music would make sense unless it had that applied to it, but that was totally just to make it fit with itself. If that makes sense.
I think as Ryan's saying, like there's like a cinematic quality to it, and there are other ideas that could be applied here that would work, but our intersubjective reality of it being the Great Oxidation event, it worked for me. Like I'm sure I brought my own things to listening to it, but hearing that being the intent, I was like, oh damn, they like wrote a thing that's about the Earth becoming oxygen based. This is wild. So really fascinating that you can apply that idea at the end and it works so well. It's also very interesting to hear that the editing process did not have that in mind. You were just sort of carving through what you thought, sculpting, as you would say, to what you liked the most.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Ryan would get it right away. It's like my whole songwriting process, I guess for the last 10 years is like very sort of haiku based, I guess would be the way I would explain it. So it's this idea of like taking some sort of like natural event and then taking some sort of philosophical concept and then drawing a line between them. And that's the thing. And so when I wrote this piece, it's like that the music, the whatever parallels or arcs of the natural event, the music, the way it made me feel was definitely that sort of that movement. And I just happened to know about that natural event. I was like, okay, this will give the music context, and it creates this kind of feedback loop back and forth where they reinforce themselves. And even if Brian didn't have the concept, I knew that he would pick up on whatever sort of emotional thing I was trying to create with the sounds, because like I said, I've been talking about this idea of writing with vibes, I guess is the only way I know how to say it, which is again such a different way for me to look at music, because for me it's always about like the like sort of Mozart Bach kind of thing. Like that's the way that I understand music, is like you have melodies, you have chords, you have harmony, they support each other. Like Nashville is like a songwriting town, and it's like for me everything is like narrative driven. And Brian and I have been talking a lot about music. It was not like that, and this piece was sort of about me trying to explore, okay, how do I write with vibes where I'm not so hyper focused on every single little thing being like, the most perfect version of that thing, perfectly composed. And actually, when I was recording it with Billy, he and I were talking about this, and it's like, as a musician or just anybody that does anything creative, it's like you learn how important editing is. Mm-hmm. And then you spend the rest of the time trying to figure out when you've edited too much or not enough. It's this constant battle. And Billy and I were talking, and we're like, like I've kind of just like realized like it really doesn't matter. Like as long as I get it there 90% of the way done, to me where it sounds like it's good, everybody else is not going to understand that last 10% or that even that like 1%. Yeah, which like is so crippling for every creative, just that like thing that you're like, okay, now this is like the perfect thing. So it's just like, and that was just another parallel in the music. It's just sort of letting go of that idea of like, okay, I have to make this thing that I think is absolutely perfect before I can show it to somebody. Yeah. Like to me, it feels very unfinished, and there's things I probably would have done different. And when I perform it, I do it totally different every time, because I'm just sort of going off of, okay, I don't want to say I'm bored with this pattern or whatever it's going on now, but it feels like it needs to move. And so when I hear the piece, I'm like, oh, I would have done this a little bit different, but I'm okay with that, because it's not about that. It's just experiencing the music. And what's cool about ambient and this whole idea of ambient is like foreground, background, like music can be both of those things. We treat music like that all the time. And something that I think is stupid and boring in the music, somebody else, that might be their favorite part. So it's just sort of composing with this idea that openness is okay, I guess. Mm-hmm. The last thing I'll say, which is new for me, which is
I mean, I really have perfectionist tendencies, and that's something I've had to consciously work against, because I'm definitely, I mean, Mia can tell you when I'm like in the mixing process or finishing something and I'm listening to it on every set of speakers that exists in our life, and she has to hear it over and over again. That last 10%, she's just like, yeah, you did something different. And, Mia's working record stores or, well, until she became a scientist most of her life. She's a big music fan, listens to music all the time. It's like she's a professional listener. So, she's attuned to all that stuff. And so I really have adoration of the Magi. The unfinished Da Vinci painting is something I go back to all the time because the fact that it's unfinished is part of what makes it such a fascinating piece. And I like that idea of, well, like showing your work, showing the scenes, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff about this in Japanese art and everything else too, or the practice of, I can't remember what this comes from, but it's like the idea that you leave something slightly out of place because perfection is only the realm of the gods or whatever, there's those kind of ideas are old, and an artist never finishes a work, they only abandon it. For me, when I'm finished with something, it's because I'm tired of fucking with it, honestly.
Right.
Like, this is for me now and nobody else is going to be able to tell. And like, I'm over it, or like whenever it, like the deadline comes and it's just got to be turned in. But like at a certain point, as someone with perfectionist tendencies, I also have had to accept / convince myself that perfection is a thing that doesn't actually exist anyway. So like if I'm operating at a high level, I know that what I'm doing is good enough. If it's good enough for me, I have high standards, then it's good enough for everybody else,
Is that sort of like demo-itis, where like you do a demo of a song and you're not even thinking about it. You're just like getting the idea out and being like comfortable with whatever the idea is.
And then you listen to it too much, and then it becomes the thing, and then you can never let go of that version of it.
Yeah.
That cripples people too. I've seen it a lot.
Interesting.
Yeah, because there's this idea. It's like, is music created or is it discovered? It's like there's this idea that like, Bach like found all of the perfect note combinations. And, it's like when I first got into music, I was definitely like of the idea that it like, it was discovered. Like there's this perfect combination of words that will perfectly encapsulate this emotion and communicate it perfectly, or there's like this 4-chord progression that is like the perfect pop, just all that stuff. It's like the older I get, it's like, no, it's definitely yeah, it's definitely, no, it's more created. It's like, just it's because we've heard it over and over and over that we assume that was the perfect version of it. But it's like when you listen to artists where you can hear 50 versions of the same song that they've done, it's like, oh, these are actually all special in their own little way.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, going back to Miles Davis, like the version of the A side of In a Silent Way, Peaceful, if you listen to the complete In a Silent Way sessions, that is just a fairly short segment of a much longer piece of music that doesn't sound like that section of it. The rest of it doesn't sound like that. They scrapped it. They were just like, nope, it's this one section with this motoric groove, 2-note bass line. We're going to do this polytonal thing over it. And that's it. And we're going to loop the beginning, and the beginning is going to become the ending also, so that I think fits with that discovery idea.
Feels good. It's another one of those pontification topics that as a podcast host, you really can't just sit and quietly sit with something. You got to keep it rolling.
We got to keep it in. Okay. Well, we never circled back to oblique strategies.
We haven't talked about the music video. I want to talk quickly about the great Oxidation event music video that Ben made.
Oh, actually, I don't know anything about this, so I want to know how Ben made this also.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful piece. It's for the first movement of the 3 pieces, and it is a lot of like aquatic and natural footage because it's speaking to the actual theme of what that movement is about. But you've done this custom post-processing to it. I don't know if you're using like processing JavaScript or what exactly you've applied here, but it's made it a much more sort of mechanical visual experience. That's not the right word, mechanical, but something
Digital.
more
I mean,
digital.
it's a very digital experience, I feel like.
But it's still every bit as organically beautiful. It's just different. And maybe that's the intent. I don't know. I just love to hear your process and intent on that.
Yeah, for sure. It's 100% processing, which if you're listening and you don't know and you're at all into creative coding stuff, it's probably the greatest thing ever. It's essentially like a Java wrapper, but it's also like a little code runner. So you can write your code and it'll run it. And it's geared towards creative. So basically what I did is I wrote a program. It would take the pixels and based on the brightness of the pixels, switch them out with a character string that I created. And so the actual content is all just stock images that I got.
I was going to say, I feel like I recognize some of it. Is it all just like open source, like nature photography, videography stuff?
Pretty much, yeah. So I wanted to try to create something that seemed like it was Earth, but it's alien. And also, we don't know if this event actually happened. Like it's all based on, chemical like concentrations and rocks and all of this, but based on what we see, hypothetically.
Well, Earth's only 5,000 years old then, so
yeah, that's true.
that probably didn't happen. It's also flat.
It's just a big ice ball. Yeah, so it's just this idea of it's like, how do I take something? And again, another point of reference for all of this stuff is like Andy Warhol, like this idea of like copies and samples. And what becomes interesting is like the little mistakes, the little copy errors. So I was like, there's no way that I can create something from scratch that will do this justice. So I'll just take something that's very obviously like found footage and just manipulate it and play with it. One of my favorite directors and favorite films, probably Ryan's as well, is Chris Marker's Sans Soleil. There's a scene
earlier today.
so good. It's just like a Bible of
it really is
stuff. But there's a scene where he's talking with a buddy of his that's a video artist, and he's got this big manipulation thing.
Oh, yeah.
Where he's like blowing out the contrast and everything on this footage. So what if
a long section of the movie where where he does that? That's right.
Yeah. So basically, what I was trying to do is create something that's analogous to that. Shit. One of my main points of reference for making music is actually from photography. When I was actually at MTSU, a friend of mine was a photographer, and I was getting him to explain to me. I was like, I don't understand what makes a good photograph. Like, I can tell if I like something, but why is this good? And essentially what he explained to me was with black and white photography, it's all about contrast, getting like super whites, super blacks, and everything in between. It always kind of stuck with me. It's like, okay, super high contrast in a piece is like something that always needs to be there. So I always like the idea of like taking the saturation on the color, just like pushing it all the way out. Like that's kind of the metaphor for how I write. Like when I know something is good, it's if it kind of is evocative of that feeling of just pushing the color contrast like all the way up. And so that's what I did with this video is all the found footage, I immediately just kind of pushed the contrast insane and then ran it through this filter, and it gives it this like super kind of like digital. I wanted it to feel like it was something that you would want to touch, I guess. That's all I was going for. I just wanted it to look like it was something that was crunchy looking.
Yeah, it looks great.
While also narrating the story, because again, like you said, it feels like it's music for some sort of visual.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to create that visual that the music already sounded like.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think it helps, for me, it helps push the whole thing and like really immerses me in it even more, which is, I think, the point of a music video, not only to like spread awareness, but to just like kind of pull you in a little bit more to it. So it definitely accomplishes that big time. There's parts of it like, I don't know if it's like an atom or a nucleus or whatever, just like center of the frame, and the processing and the color saturation and color manipulation is just like, my brain is perfectly tickled. I'm just like, I will watch it for way too long. Love it so much. So
Yeah, there's one of the recurring features is that there's that image, but then sometimes it's like the sun.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's something else. There's frequently like a circle in the middle of the frame or somewhere moving around the frame, but it's just a lot of different versions of that. Yeah, wow, that's awesome.
That's actually what I was going for, because like I said, so much of that event is based around just physics and chemistry. So it's like early photosynthesis, the waste product was oxygen from the chemical process.
Yeah.
Oxygen bonds with everything.
Yeah.
So it destroyed everything. But then once, sort of cells were able to figure out how to dispose of it and use it, oxygen is actually one of the most efficient things.
Yeah.
So I don't know, there's just something so poetic to me about the simplicity of the physics and the circle thing. It's like,
yeah,
it's all about the circle.
I know. I'm a real circle head too. But also, okay, so the oxygen destroyed everything because it bonds to everything.
That's partially why everything got wiped out, because the earliest cells didn't have the necessary chemical bonds to not be destroyed by the free-flowing oxygen.
The parallel vibe that I got from it that I mentioned to you guys early on was and we can put the AI hype cycle aside for the moment, but as we are inside this AI hype cycle that is propping up the the stock market, it gave me very, like, because of how digitized it is, and Sam Altman's also always like, he's like, when Elon Musk is like, we're going to have self-driving cars in 6 months, that's like Sam Altman about AGI. He's like, we're going to have AGI in 6 months and it's going to take all your jobs. It gave me that feeling too, like the digitization and the, like, it's very like HAL 9000, like the circle. It always feels like you're being surveilled, it gave me that kind of vibe too. Yeah.
When you saw the video, Ryan, you gave a rave review in our text thread, and I loved it so much that I saved it and put it in my document for this release, because I was like, this encapsulates the next evolution of this piece to me. Like, the piece is about this thing that happened pre-ancient times, supposedly. But what you're getting at is sort of an evolution of it, which I think is just a really fascinating thing. I'm going to read it to you, and maybe you should read it because it is literally your quote. So we can go back and forth.
I'm trying to find it. Isn't it in the document somewhere?
It's in the document. I also can put it in our chat.
I see. Should I leave out the part that says fucking love it?
No. That's the quote.
Fucking love it. Primordial, erotic, AGI slouching forward to be. I can't even read it with a straight face. Fucking love it. Primordial, erotic, AGI slouching forward to be born before taking our jobs and killing us all. Perfect fit for the track, which slaps. Haven't listened in a while. At first blush, 10 out of 10, no notes. We'll see if anything pops out after more viewings. There's really only the only part of it you really need is this one primordial, erotic, AGI slouching forward to be born before taking our jobs and killing us all.
Absolutely. Like,
I stand by it.
I'm primordial and AGI is just like such a provocative pairing of words to me.
Well, yeah, like everything's so bubbly and gurgly, and then there's a shot early on, and I don't know what it actually is, but it kind of looks like a naked woman in profile. That's where the erotic part came from.
Well, it's
okay.
Yeah,
that's probably an ocean vent. Because that's where
early life.
That
is what it is. Yeah.
began around the thermal vents at the ocean floor.
Primordial erotic. Amazing.
Yeah, no, the AI thing is in there. Like I say, in the whole like haiku thing, when I remember hearing that, the YouTube or whatever the guy talking about, it's like, this is kind of like what's happening now with information. It's like we don't really know what to do with
Right.
information. So
So that's all about design.
Mhm.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'm so glad that we got to chat about that, because I not only just wanted to shower you with compliments because it's very well done, but learning and having those insights gives me just another layer of appreciation for it. So that'll be linked in the show notes, dear listener. I want us to talk about Breanne Eno and then give our closing thoughts. This has been wonderful, but let's talk about Breanne Eno for a second, because Ryan Norris, that's our origin according to me.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I guess for people that don't know what the oblique strategies are, that's how we came into this, right? Did you say there? Remind me of the story. You said there was a Breanne Eno release, and as part of it,
No. So I don't know what the deal was. So at Grimey's, a very popular record store here in Nashville, it used to be at a different location than it is now. Ryan worked there. I was just flipping through the racks, and probably at the Breanne Eno card, like in the racks, there was a card with some obtuse prompt on it. And I did not know what that was and asked you about it. And you were like, oh, that's oblique strategies, which was also a new pairing of words. So I learned about oblique strategies, Breanne Eno's deck of prompts to get you out of a rut in a creative rut. But yeah, it was taped to like the card in Grimey's. And in my addled memory, they were around the store. It wasn't just one. It was
interesting.
in other places. So I don't think it even had anything to do with like a recent Eno release. It was just like, here's, play the song backwards. Like, what?
We were probably funning around. Yeah. Okay. So they were come up with by Breanne Eno and Peter Schmidt, who was a friend of his, who they realized kind of concurrently that they were both doing the same thing, which was they were writing down just like as if you would write something down on a Post-it note. They were writing down these different prompts for if you were in a creative rut, like draw a card out of the deck and do what it recommends. I happen to have my deck right here. The one on top, interestingly enough, just says distorting time.
Oh, wow.
Next is it finished? Change nothing and continue with immaculate consistency. Why would anybody want it? The most important thing is the thing most easily forgotten. I mean, the most famous one is honor thy error as a hidden intention, which I think is very important. Happy accidents are that's something I use all the time. And I think a lot of creative people do. I think there's this misconception that is perpetrated by some artists that like, and sometimes it does happen. Sometimes you sit down and you start playing and something just comes out. But people say this thing, and I think they attribute it to like Mozart or Beethoven or Bach. Like, oh, I heard the whole thing in my head and all I had to do was write it down. Horse shit. Nobody works that way. And anyone who's trying to convince you of that is a fucking liar. Just like no one understands anything. Like no one understands why this record takes off and that one doesn't. Like anyone trying to tell you they understand it, they're lying. They're a fucking liar too. So these cards are just to help you. They're funny stories. Like, oh wait, two more favorites. Making a brick, not building a wall. And gardening, not architecture. Those are two of my favorites. But there are funny stories around these. For example, there's a famous story where I don't know if it was where the streets have no name or it was one of you mentioned Demo-itis earlier.
Yeah.
One of U2's biggest hits started as a demo that The Edge made, and they were just building on top of the demo and they couldn't get it right or whatever. They couldn't get it sounding the way they wanted to. And Eno was about to just hit the erase button on the tape. And someone, I don't know if it was Lanois somebody else in the studio had to physically wrestle him to the ground to keep because he drew the oblique strategy card that said make a sudden destructive movement or whatever it is, right? And he was just gonna go for it. Like, here we are. There's also a great story from Heroes, and I think I don't know if it's Moss Garden or Neukölln, or it's one of the tracks on the B side of Heroes where Bowie and Eno had each drawn cards. They were working at cross purposes. One said, like the one I just read, change nothing and continue with immaculate consistency. I think that was the one that Eno had. And the one that Bowie had was like, change everything, blow up everything, whatever. And so they never let each other read their cards. So they're just like kind of at war with each other without really knowing why. So anyway, it's a fun thing. What's funny about it? Oh, here you go. Make a sudden, destructive, unpredictable action. Incorporate.
So do you use these?
So here's what's funny is I always want to, but I feel like what has actually happened is I know most of them so well that they're like kind of in my brain. So that then when I pull one to try to use it, it just says something I already know. And I'm just like, oh, fuck this, you know?
But it's not about not knowing them, right? It's about like,
it's not. And like, and the whole thing is whether you understand what you're supposed to do or not, you're still supposed to do whatever it says. Like, just figure out a way to make it make sense. And that's the whole thing. That's what's supposed to be the unlock. You know, it's like, that does not apply to what I'm doing right now, but how can I make it apply?
Fascinating. Ben, do you use those? Do you use prompts, either literally the oblique strategies, or just other ways to get yourself out of a rut in that way?
No. Everything I do is process based. I feel like it's like once you've played music for about 10 years, you kind of know what you can do and you kind of know where your limits are, and it's like you could practice every day to get this one thing like, you know, a little bit better. But I feel like most of what I do with my music is just trying to not sound like me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's part of the idea with this thing was like, okay, here's this thing that I did. Now you make it cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all about process.
A lot of the decisions I make now, I feel like are motivated by boredom. And I think that's what a lot of it is. It's like, how do I make decisions that don't sound like the decisions that I would always make? Right? Like, that's the definition of being in a creative rut. It's like, how do I want to make something that doesn't sound like, I mean, it's great to have a sonic or whatever, a creative signature, a style, a voice, whatever. But sometimes you want to be able to get outside of that, you know? Like, how do I do something that's not like everything else that I do? How do I do something that doesn't sound like me, you know?
Yeah.
Which is like, that's the eternal conundrum for me right now. I have no idea. I try, you know?
I think that's a good transition to the sort of like summarizing this a little bit and maybe looking forward, looking ahead. The Great Oxidation event is a fantastic body of work between the two of you, but we've been talking for months about additional releases that are Sugar Skulls, Coupler, kind of maybe not collab in the same way. We'll talk about this in a future episode, but like there's more music from both of you that I think is perfectly fits into what you're talking about. It is outside the expectation of both of you. Now, it's not saying that it's like a brand new sonic palette that one would never imagine, but it's very new and different for both of you. And I'm excited for people to hear it. And I think that you are, you know, I think it's happening.
Yeah.
I'm only being wary of time because I think we've been talking for like a minute now.
8 hours.
We Joe Rogan'd it. We said we weren't going to, but we did.
We Rogan'd it.
And I feel like we're not done, which is good. It's always good to sort of have more to contemplate and pontificate. And so I would definitely love to do this again with you all, regardless of there being a release around it. Just talking about music and your process and this idea that the imperfections of music and the imperfections of the decision making. It's really very satisfying. Like, even as a non-musician, it's very satisfying to think of the creative process in these ways and to hear other people talk about it in those ways. Definitely interesting, for sure. Obviously, I'm going to tell everyone to go listen to the Great Oxidation event and to watch the video. All of it's linked in the show notes. Anything else? Any closing thoughts that you want to share as we close up here?
I mean, not to open up a whole other ramble, but I really feel like what you're saying is kind of the thing that we're kind of looking at now is like this whole idea of like perfection. Everything is so like auto-tuned and face-tuned, which those things are great. I love those things. You know, they're tools, but it's like I feel like perfection is kind of boring now at this point. It's like, especially with electronic stuff, it's like there's like a fakeness or something when things are too perfect. It's not that they're fake, but it's like they're more easily sort of dismissed, I guess. I don't know. That it's yes, I agree with the making imperfection compelling, or this idea of like, I don't know. When is it done? When is the thing done? What's the last edit?
Yeah. What is the last edit? That's so. Well, I'm going to plug a piece that I'm going to post soon.
Okay.
I decided to start a Substack to make myself right because, like I said, didn't go to music school. Degree is in English and philosophy, and I spent some time as a music journalist, and I was pretty good at it, but didn't like it. And I'm always trying to force myself to write. And so I wrote this piece a while back, and this is totally relevant to everything we've been talking about. It's called Editing as a Creative Act, and it's just basically about decision-making in art making. So the thing you said about the final edit, like, I think it's kind of the way the piece ends. So that is coming, but
by the time this episode's out, it might be published.
It might be.
And we're going to take me a minute to edit this. So
yeah, well, it is. You got 2 hours. You got 2 hours of material.
You know how I told you at the beginning that I like to take all the ums and the pauses out? Not anymore. Not with a 2-hour recording. No way.
Leave them in.
No, I'm just kidding. I am really happy to be able to work with the both of you and to pontificate these things and kind of be a part of the community with the both of you. It's really enlightening for me and really gratifying to hear the music that you make. So thank you both for that very much. And thank you for the Great Oxidation event.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Huge thanks to Ryan and Ben for the chat. The Great Oxidation event is out everywhere now, and I implore everyone to go give it a listen in full. You can just let it play in the background and just experience it. You heard them both talk about it. It's not meant to be listened to like pop music. Just let it wash over you. I can't wait to have them both back on the show to unleash their galaxy brain thinking on me once again. Loads of links are in the show notes. Check all those out to learn more. Shout out to Mac Burris for the show music. Hit him up at Mac Burris on Instagram. YKRecords.com, RecordsYK on the just, it's all in the show notes. Get into the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk at you soon. Take care of yourselves.
Bye.
Is this just
Okay.
is this a terrible question, Ryan?
No. It's just my headphones.
Is this his kind way?
Sorry, now I can hear you.
Is this
So
his
can you
kind
say it
way
one
of
more
saying
time?
I don't want to?
I don't want to answer that question.
This is a really nice way of saying that you don't
Next
want to answer
question.
this. That's great.
No, what is the question? What is the question?